Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of things. Number one, this video is not going to be perfect. It's not going to match up with my voice and my lips, and I'm still looking at it. It's working okay right now, but the computer's telling me that's not going to happen. So don't worry about it. Find something else beautiful to look at. Look around you. There should be something. Speaking of which, today was an awesome day. This is Saturday, by the way. It was a beautiful day. I hope you got a chance to get outside, do something fun, enjoy yourself. We got tests coming up. Let's get to it. Looking at the study guide, the major idea of this unit is America's consolidation of wealth. The idea that certain individuals, the Carnegie, Rockefeller types, are going to work hard in order to master their industries, and all of that wealth is going to accumulate into a few hands, and there are some people who are not very happy about that. So let's make sure we keep that as one of our major ideas, the accumulation of wealth into a few hands. On top of that, the idea of social Darwinism, that certain individuals have a right to that money because they outworked other individuals, or certain races, once we get to imperialism, have a right to the mastery of other races because they have outworked them. That Darwinistic tone runs all the way through, like that, all the way through the video here. Okay, so keep an eye on it as we go. A few things to start with. Capital goods. The United States business empire is built upon the idea of us making building block items. Think about all the blessings of America. Huge expanse of natural terrain, which features all of this mineral deposit territory throughout the U.S. Most of it at this point is in places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, but there's plenty of it to be had in the West as well. Also, huge immigrant population coming into America to do the factory work. We have a very entrepreneurial spirit, and at this point, we've got a laissez-faire government attitude toward business. That is to say, the government is going to say to business, hey, make some coin. There's not going to be much of an attempt by the government to limit what happens in the factory and the workplace. We'll see that start in our next unit once we round the corner to 1900, get ourselves onto Teddy Roosevelt. But for right now, it's the owners who really run the show. Vertical and horizontal integration are two ways that people could integrate or expand their businesses. We talked about various individuals who did it, but essentially if I'm vertically integrating, I'm going to take over the making of all parts of a certain product. So for instance, I've got some iced coffee in here. There it is. Okay. In the iced coffee, I am going to have a variety of products, right? But what if I grew my own coffee trees and I grew my own cows? Yeah, you can grow cows. You just plant them in the ground. Trust me. And then you milk them and you get the chocolate milk and you put it in the iced coffee and it's good. Maybe I have my own glacier. That's my son, Colin. Say hi, Colin.
Everything that you're saying is a lie.
See how my children love me? Thank you. Okay. Now, going back to vertical integration, all of the ideas are going to be built up towards cheaper overall production. Now, as well, horizontal integration. What if Colin's back? Go away, Colin. Go away. Such love. Okay. What if we look at horizontal integration, what if I become the best maker of iced coffee in the country and I drive all of the people out of there, all of the people like the hipsters like Dagny, and then those corporate giants like Star of the Bucks, just drive them all out of here and make myself one big empire. That'd be fantastic. Okay. Moving along, John Rockefeller. Rockefeller is America's greatest business person, and he does it in oil. It's important to note that he both horizontally and vertically integrates the company, and by doing so, he's able to take such an enormous share of the market. Now, during Rockefeller's time, the big product was kerosene, and kerosene was something people used to heat their homes. This gets really to the heart of why someone like Rockefeller is controversial. If Rockefeller controls the nation's kerosene industry and provides kerosene without interruption at a reasonable price, you would argue that the government has no business getting in his way. If, on the other hand, Rockefeller tries to use his control of the market share to manipulate the price, that is to say, to make it go up and up and up and up on something that is considered an essential for an American, that's where we're going to have a problem. And when we get into our next unit, that's the argument the government's going to use to start breaking up monopolies like Standard Oil. Gospel of wealth is this Andrew Carnegie idea of charity, being kind in the sense of offering opportunity down to individuals through ladders. Carnegie believed that people who are willing to work and to help themselves should have the opportunity to be brought up into the next level of society, I beg your pardon, by their work, not by handouts, by their willingness for them, if these are ladders, to put one foot in front of the other, and climb their way up the ladder as they go. Now, the organizations that are going to try and represent the working people in this are labor unions. Just to make sure we understand, the core idea of a labor union is take a number of workers, combine them together. That's Colin singing in case you're hearing things. That ain't me. Okay. Combine the workers together, have them bargain collectively. That is to say the power of 100, or in this case 100,000, is so much better than the power of one. If that collective bargaining process doesn't merit what we want, then we're going to go on strike and we're going to take away the labor that powers the factory. And then it's a game of chicken. How long can the workers go without resources and food? How long can the owners go without making money in the plant? Okay. The two primary unions in America, the Knights of Labor is the earliest one. It's much more long-term in its focus. It's essentially trying to flip the capitalist industrial America on its head in order to create a socialist world by recruiting workers all around the world in all different fields. With that design, Terence Powderly hopes that he can convince all the people of the world to unite. It's a bit of a pipe dream, unfortunately, Terence. The union that really does much more for the workers in the long term is the American Federation of Labor of Sam Gompers. Gompers was able to use his workers, skilled workers only. That's a big point, skilled workers only. Okay, and he's going to use their ability to go on strike in order to take away the work from the workplace. That's what you do if you're a labor union. Now, Gompers AFL didn't allow women, it didn't allow minorities, so there's a lot of holes in this plan that we don't like today, Sam, but it also does a very good job of really holding owners to a hard line. Give us what we want in incremental amounts, bread and butter goals, like a cent more a day, 1 hour less of work a day, those sorts of things, or we're going on strike. Page 2. During both of the strikes that we looked at, there is a government support of the owners. So at both Homestead and at Pullman, the workers go on strike. The owners don't know exactly how to solve it. They call the government comes in and breaks up the strike. That's the model on both of them. Small differences in details, but the main idea here is that the American people tend to be pro-owner and not pro-union. Let's explain that. The average person, let's go back to my fine cup of iced coffee here. The average person doesn't want to pay any more for this than they have to. If the workers get higher wages, then I assume that the price of the iced coffee is going to get higher and higher and higher. Now, what's that going to do to things? Eventually, it's going to mean that the person who owns the business is going to have to pay a little bit more out to the owners. And as a result of that, that means the price has got to be passed on to someone. And who do I have? I have my customers. Hey, iced coffee is more today. It's $4.25 instead of $3.95. Why? Business, man. Business. That's life. Enjoy your iced coffee. Okay. What factors contribute to the massive growth of urban areas? Industrialization. Immigrants arriving in America to take those industrial jobs, living in urban areas. We talked about dumbbell tenements. We also talked about, going on kind of the next question here, how the city expanded. The city is going to grow in a vertical sense. No, that's horizontal, you idiot. In a horizontal sense, there we go. Stick to what I know. And we do that through modes of mass transportation. Rail, cars, subway lines, eventually elevated trains, all of that's going to be a way that I no longer have to live and work really next to one another. I've got more space in between the two. I think about Bakersfield, and I think this is particularly true of BHS. A lot of students don't necessarily live right by BHS. I drive to work, other people maybe take the bus, or some people walk to school, but we come in from a variety of different areas, and that way there's more space. We don't have to be as crowded. Now, we also are going to grow vertically, and that's really due to superior machining of goods. We have stronger steel, we have better concrete, we can build buildings that scrape the sky, and then we can start piling people into them. The dumbbell tenements with really crowded apartment areas that immigrants are going to live in. Not very safe, let's be fair about that. Not in any way cute or dainty, but these are people who are trying to cut expenses. You're going to pile 6, 8, 10 people in there. And to go back to the idea of laissez-faire government, for the early part of the industrial period, late 19th century, early 20th century, most cities, most states are going to look at that and say, that's just a reality. It's not our business to govern how many people live in a place where we don't know what to do. It's really going to take tragedies to change that. Big fires. There's one called the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. We'll see in our next unit. That changes people's minds. Moving to the bottom, the political machines of Boss Tweed. Now, Tweed is going to take all of those immigrants arriving in New York City. They're particularly Irish immigrants, and he's going to use their votes in order to elect corrupt politicians. Now, these politicians will make sure that city building projects, roads, bridges, if we're talking New York City, maybe like the birth of the subway system, those building projects will go to companies that we control. And then our companies, of course, are going to hire our immigrants. So if I'm an immigrant, what am I getting? I'm getting a house and a job, and in return, I offer you a vote. If I'm a politician, I steer all the jobs towards all of your businesses, and in return, I get kickbacks. You're going to give me $25, $50, $100,000 once in a while, and that's going to assure my loyalty. So all of that happens. The city of New York gets defrauded, and in the meantime, the money just piles up for the Tweed machine. Don't forget that Tweed's ring, or the Tammany Hall ring, was often depicted as a tiger by Thomas Nast. That's a lot of T's. Tweed ring, Tammany Hall, tiger, Thomas Nast. Ya boy, flipping the page. Imperialism. Imperialism is the movement towards the taking of territories around the world. It's a very popular late 19th century phenomenon, unfortunately. It's big among the Europeans. Places like Britain, France, Germany all have imperial territories, but also talked about the fact that the Japanese are big into this as well. Why America? Well, America's got a few reasons, and economics is a big part of them. We simply make too much. America has too many products, and they're the type of products you can't just pass on to the average consumer. If you consider that the average person living in a small town, Topeka, Kansas, perhaps at this point, might need a few items, but they don't need steel. They don't need a barrel of oil. They don't need those items. Who does need them? Countries, areas like the Philippines that we'll eventually get into. Those are places where we're going to be able to really take our massive amounts of capital goods, as we spoke about at the beginning of this video, and we ship them out there, and they use those all the way along the way. Also, some cultural reasons. Fisk and Strong here are Anglo-Saxonists. They believe that America has been granted the greatest civilization in the history of mankind, and it would be an absolute anti-Christian, or non-Christian, I should say, thing to do not to share it with people who are lesser than. So there's a very strong social Darwinist ideal here that we have a right to do these things, but also a responsibility from a Christian standpoint. This is what the famous poet Rudyard Kipling referred to as the white man's burden. Okay, Frederick Jackson Turner's frontier thesis is a little different. Turner's a historian, studies the frontier, and he finds out that in 1890 we've kind of run out of frontier. What does that mean? We haven't run out of places to settle Americans, but we've run out of places Americans haven't seen, and he's troubled by that. Because from the first day that Americans arrived in 1607, they've always been westwardly motivated. They've constantly pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to the west. What happens when there's no more west? Turner has all these nightmarish ideals. What happens then? We might have Americans who simply are too upset, and those people who generally would have been the ones we pushed out to the frontier, maybe they begin to stew within civilization, and they make trouble for the rest of us. Or perhaps the nation stalls. We've always had kind of a national project going, this manifest destiny idea that we grappled with for a couple of units a few months ago. That idea pushed us across the country. What now? So Turner would say we need a national project. In the same way that Kennedy's going to say we need to go to the moon in the 1960s, Turner's saying we need to go somewhere. Where? Well, the most likely place, looking at our next spot on the study guide, is the Spanish-American War. Why Spain? Well, pick a European country with existing Western Hemisphere colonies that isn't that hard to defeat. Spain's pretty much your list. Okay, it's not Britain, couldn't defeat them. It's not France, couldn't defeat them. It isn't Germany, they didn't have much in the Western Hemisphere anywhere, but Spain's a beatable power. So in 1898, we're going to head off to war. The precipitant of that war is the explosion of the USS Maine. The rallying cry goes, "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain." When the ship explodes, we assume that that was done by the Spanish. That's not true, but that sparks this very intense nationalistic fervor, this jingoism. And then American newspaper manufacturers like Hearst and Pulitzer are going to fan the flames of that jingoism with yellow journalism. And they're going to push us out there. They're going to justify it. They're going to say, well, this will be good for business. There's sugar there. There's tobacco there. They're also going to push it from the standpoint that the Cubans are being mistreated by the Spaniards. But at the end of the day, a lot of this is an American itch, an American feeling of need to go to war. When the Treaty of Paris is signed, we pick up Puerto Rico and Guam and the Philippines as territories. Cuba is a U.S. territory that we're going to keep an eye on, but it's not a territory we get to keep. We keep a naval base there, but not the whole thing. The most controversial place on there is the Philippines. America did not give the Filipinos self-rule. That came under huge criticism. In other words, why Cuba? Why do the Cubans get self-rule, but the Filipinos don't? That seems like a knock on Asians, for the lack of a better thing. And it certainly looks like a policy that is not 100% clear. So that particular decision is going to gain America a lot of criticism. I put on here Hawaii. Hawaii had been for a lot of time a possibility for the United States. It's out there as a naval port. It's also a great economic place as far as the sugar industry goes. But in the early 1890s, the protection that Hawaiian sugar had in U.S. markets was removed. The people who removed that protection were the individuals who were hoping that the U.S. would get involved in Cuba. So removing the protection from Hawaii's sugar, what does that do? Well, it makes Hawaii this suddenly foreign country that now has to import its sugar into the United States and get hit with tariffs. The people who owned the sugar plantations in Hawaii didn't want that. So they overthrew the queen, Liliuokalani, and in doing so, they assured that the United States would be able to get its sugar in from Hawaii and that Hawaiian sugar would not be tariffed. Now, Hawaii's not annexed as quickly as those gentlemen would like. It's going to take until 1898. But when it finally is, then that sugar can flow in there freely. And eventually in 1959, it became the 50th state, the Aloha State, a place where I grew up. You have Hawaii to blame for all of this. Have a good night.